This story begins in Castleton, Vermont, May of 1775, where Ethan Allen, his Green Mountain Boys, and representatives from the colony of Connecticut are planning the capture of the British forts Ticonderoga and Crown Point. Arriving with identical orders from the colony of Massachusetts was Colonel Benedict Arnold. To say that there was a contrast in styles would be an understatement.
On Sunday evening, we arrived at Castleton, where, on the next day, was held a council of war. After debating and consulting on different methods of procedure, it was concluded and voted that a party of 30 men proceed to Skenesborough and take possession of all the boats that they should find there. The remainder of our men were under the command of Colonel Ethan Allen and Colonel James Easton as his second, and Captain Warner, the third in command. Colonel Arnold arrived to us from you with his orders, but we were shockingly surprised when Colonel Arnold presumed to contend for the command of those forces that we had raised. But Mr. Arnold strenuously contended and insisted that he had the right to command them and all their officers, which bred such a mutiny amongst the soldiers and almost frustrated our whole design. Our men were for clubbing their firelocks and marching home, but were prevented by Colonel Allen and Colonel Easton. They would not be commanded by any others but those they engaged with.
On the night of May 9th, 270 men assembled on the shore at Hans Cove in Shoreham, across the lake from Ticonderoga. There were not enough boats to transport all the men, so Allen, Easton, Arnold, and 80 others departed, while Warner commanded those left at the cove. The Allen party arrived at Fort Ticonderoga in the early morning, while the British garrison was still sleeping, and the fort was surrendered to them. Notice the title they've assigned to themselves in this next letter.
We marched within a few miles of Ticonderoga, and this morning at daybreak took possession of said fort, and gave the command thereof into the hands of Colonel Ethan Allen. Colonel Arnold refuses to give up his command, which causes much difficulty.
Seth Warner, with the rear guard, crossed the lake and joined Allen early in the morning. He was sent off with about 100 men to take possession of the fort ruins at Crown Point. Having been previously summoned from their land holdings near Burlington, their cousin Remember Baker joined Colonel Warner at Crown Point. Note how Ethan Allen identifies himself next.
I conclude Captain Warner is by this time in possession of Crown Point, the ordnance, stores, etc.
With both forts out of British control, the main mission was accomplished, but the jockeying for leadership was as fierce as ever. Here are events from Benedict Arnold's point of view.
Colonel Allen, finding he had the ascendancy over his people, positively insisted I should have no command. The power is now taken out of my hands, and I am not consulted, nor have I a voice in any matters. There is not the least regularity among the troops, but everything is governed by whim and caprice. Colonel Allen is a proper man to head his own wild people, but entirely unacquainted with military service.
Colonels Allen and Easton then set about to assure that the Canadians would take the side of the colonists against Britain. 2 letters were crafted, one to the native population, one to the French. You'll note that Crown Point's stature has been elevated.
I hope as Indians are good and honest men, you will not fight for King George against your friends in America, as they have done you no wrong. If you, our brother Indians, do not fight on either side, we will still be friends and brothers. And let us have venison at our forts on the lake, and have rum, bread, and what you want.
2 days after sending this letter, Allen sent a copy of it to the Assembly of Connecticut. In the letter to the French Canadians, notice the new title that Allen and Easton have assigned themselves.
You are undoubtedly very sensible that a war has already commenced between Great Britain and the colonies. But pray, is it necessary the people of your country and ours should butcher each other? God forbid. Pray, let old England and the colonies fight it out, and the Canadians stand by.
Once again, the Provincial Congress was notified of their action, 5 days later. By July, the Committee to the Continental Congress recognized the importance of the Lake Champlain fortresses and sent their colonel, Benjamin Hinman, along with 1,000 men to occupy them. Commanders Easton and Allen were very pleased. Benedict Arnold, once again, a contrast of styles.
Whereupon, at Crown Point, we let Colonel Arnold know that it was expected that he should give up the command of the garrison to Colonel Hinman and be under him as officer there. But he declined it, declared he would not be second to any man, disbanded his forces, and resigned his commission.
That winter, General Henry Knox arrived at Fort Ticonderoga to transport 29 cannons from Crown Point and 30 cannons captured at Ticonderoga. The 120,000 pounds of artillery was transported on a 200-mile journey with 42 carts and 81 oxen. General Knox delivered the armaments to General George Washington, where he set up the cannon on Dorchester Heights and ended the British siege of Boston. Ethan Allen, Seth Warner, and Remember Baker were cousins and land speculators, certainly not military leaders or politicians. But these Green Mountain Boys were able to lead a ragtag group of farmers, hunters, and trappers to accomplish the first defeat of the British in the Revolutionary War. Use Google Maps to navigate yourself to Crown Point Historic Site, where you'll learn about the historic and strategic importance of this fort on Lake Champlain. Then navigate yourself to the Ethan Allen Homestead and Museum, where Ethan lived the last years of his life. Learn more about the man and about life in 18th century Vermont.